The bride shrieked as the dock groaned beneath her, champagne glasses tipping just as the entire wedding setup began to drift into the middle of Lake Arden with her, the groom, and nearly 200 stunned guests aboard. 30 minutes earlier, I'd warned Melissa that my dock wasn't a free venue. Now, watching from my porch with a lemonade in one hand and binoculars in the other, I couldn't help but mutter, "I told you so." That Saturday had started like any other quiet weekend morning on the lake. I stepped outside with hot coffee in hand, ready to feed the ducks and maybe tighten a few bolts on the dock. The air was still, fog curling around the shoreline, and birds chirped lazily through the trees until the screech of a power drill pierced the calm. Spilling coffee down my front, I spun to see a massive white canopy halfway upon my dock. Beneath it, women in pastel dresses arranged chairs while a pair of burly guys hauled in speakers. Right in the middle stood Melissa Langley. Melissa, the queen of the HOA, treated our lakeside community like her royal estate. Her clipboard might as well have been a scepter. Her highlights were always 2 shades too bright, and her sunglasses cost more than my lawnmower. I had ignored her calls, newsletters, and door knocks for months. But this was a full-blown wedding reception on my private property. I stormed down the path, dodging floral arches and folding chairs. "Melissa," I called out, "this is not community property. You don't have permission. Take all this down." She gave me a condescending smile and waved a piece of paper. I cleared it with the HOA. "It's my niece's wedding. Don't be a grump, Frank. It's just for a few hours." The paper she handed me? A wedding invitation. "This isn't a permit," I said, handing it back. "It's a party flyer. You're trespassing." Her smile flattened. "Frank, please. Think of the memories. The lake. The romance. No. Off my dock. Now." But Melissa turned and barked orders to the catering staff. The DJ ignored me, setting up next to my fishing chair. I walked calmly back to my porch. No yelling. No threats. Just quiet resolve. What Melissa didn't know, I'd recently made the dock detachable. Winter repairs had required a temporary release system. 10 minutes later, from my porch rocker, I watched through binoculars as the dock began to drift. The wedding ceremony had just begun. The groom fidgeted. Bridesmaids adjusted flower crowns. Melissa stood near the generator, glued to her phone. The dock groaned. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it broke free. The flower girl noticed first, pointing to the gap growing between shore and dock. Chaos exploded. Champagne spilled. Guests screamed. A speaker fell into the lake with a splash. The bride sobbed. The groom turned pale. Melissa shouted about lawsuits. A toddler nearly dove off after a balloon. My phone buzzed. "Frank," said Tom from the sheriff's office, "tell me I'm not watching a dock wedding float across Lake Arden." "You're watching it. You detach it?" I sipped my lemonade. "Didn't touch a thing." He laughed and hung up. Down at the water, Melissa grabbed a megaphone and tried to restore order. No one listened. 2 HOA volunteers launched paddle boats in a frantic rescue mission, one of which capsized halfway there. Guests screamed. Someone fainted into the shrimp platter. The chaos was live-streamed by a teenager who happened to be filming. The internet dubbed it the Dock of Doom. Comments flew. Titanic 2.0. HOA gone wild. Lake wedding meets wet disaster. Melissa saw the hovering news chopper and went full PR mode. She grabbed the mic from the DJ's ruined booth. "Thank you for joining us for this unique floating lake ceremony." She beamed, teeth clenched. "Please enjoy our open bar and floating hors d'oeuvres." I nearly dropped my coffee. The sheriff's boat finally arrived. No one was hurt, just wet and humiliated. Melissa was the last to disembark, arms folded, glaring at my porch. I raised my mug. By sunset, the neighborhood group chat was on fire. Memes. Clips. Even a remix of Melissa's megaphone speech set to circus music. My old army buddy texted, "You magnificent bastard." Melissa wasn't done, though. Less than 24 hours later, she called an emergency HOA meeting. It turned into a community roast. Residents aired years of grievances. Paul, a quiet retired firefighter, stood and said, "Melissa, you've crossed the line for the last time." A motion passed. Melissa was voted out as HOA president. She sulked for a week, then listed her house. A few days later, the environmental agency visited. Someone had reported damage to lake vegetation. Turned out, It wasn't my dock, but her generator and setup had done the harm. She was fined over $6,000. She left without goodbyes. Her house was sold to a quiet couple who liked gardening. I rebuilt the dock stronger, wider, better. The neighbors helped. We painted a sign: "Private dock trespassers will be drifted." When the HOA hosted a Freedom Float celebration, Paul asked to launch lanterns from my dock. I agreed, with one condition: no weddings. The evening was magical. The lanterns floated like stars. Paul gave a short speech. Someone handed me a golden painted or labeled Best Dock Defense. I leaned back in my chair, the oar beside me, and watched the lake shimmer. For the first time in ages, peace was real. Then my phone buzzed. Paul texted, "Frank, do you know anything about a zip line from the hill to your roof?" I looked up. Sure enough, a rope line stretched between two trees, aimed at my shed. I sighed. Not again. Time to reinforce the roof. And maybe add an air horn. Because around here, the lake might stay calm, but the neighborhood? Never.